Living out here, right on the edge of the forest, had always felt like winning some cosmic lottery. Our house sat on a quiet patch of land bordering the nature reserve. No traffic, no streetlights, no nosy neighbors. Just me, my wife Liana, and our golden retriever Max, with acres of trees, birdsong, and solitude. After years of building a cybersecurity business from the ground up, I'd earned this peace. Max and I had our morning ritual. Leash up, hit the trail that curved behind our property line, and ran parallel to the tree line. Sometimes Liana would join us, coffee in hand, but most days it was just me and my dog enjoying the cool air and pine needles underfoot. I never imagined that walking my own damn dog on my own damn land would turn into a federal case. The first letter was tucked neatly into the mailbox, printed on that passive-aggressively stiff paper only HOAs seem to use. Notice of violation, it declared in bold. Apparently, I had committed several offenses against the glorious community standards of the Silver Pines Homeowners Association. That was news to me, considering I wasn't a member. Max, allegedly, had been seen off-leash near a common area, had aggressively barked at landscaping, and, I laughed out loud at this one, trespassed on a trail maintained by the HOA. The trail in question. It ran straight through the back of my land, the same land that had been privately zoned and fenced decades before Silver Pines even existed. I double-checked the parcel maps just to be sure I wasn't losing my mind. Nope. Still mine. I figured it was a mix-up. Maybe someone new in the HOA office didn't know the boundaries. I called the number on the letter. A secretary transferred me to Sandra Brooks, the new HOA president. She had a crisp voice, clipped vowels, and the warmth of a lizard sunning on granite. "Mr. Holt," she said, "we've received multiple complaints, and if you intend to continue using Silver Pines common areas, we'll need to formally register you as a member." "I'm not in Silver Pines," I said, calm as a monk. "Never have been." Sandra paused. "That trail is part of our mapped community access. I can email you a copy." I chuckled. "I can send you the deed to the land it runs through." Her tone cooled. "Then we'll have to look into it further. We expect cooperation." I ended the call, tossed the violation letter into the recycling, and scratched Max behind the ears. "Well, buddy," I muttered, "looks like the HOA's bored again." Little did I know, that was just their opening move. 3 days after that ridiculous phone call with Sandra, another letter arrived. This time it came via certified mail, complete with a signature slip and a sense of self-importance so thick you could spread it on toast. "Notice of escalated violation," it read. The alleged offenses were the same as before, only now they'd multiplied like roaches in a summer garage. Total fines, $750. The letter warned that failure to pay would result in the matter being referred to the HOA's legal department, followed by community enforcement actions. I wasn't sure what that meant, but I had a feeling it involved clipboards, bad haircuts, and the smell of entitlement. Liana read the letter over my shoulder and laughed. "Did they just try to bill us for walking our dog?" "Oh, they're not done," I said. And I was right. The next morning, something felt off. I took Max out like usual, but the moment we stepped onto the gravel path leading from our driveway to the trail, I stopped cold. Someone had dug a shallow trench across it, about a foot deep and a couple feet wide, just enough to trip a person or twist an ankle. Next to it were 3 signs, stuck into the dirt like accusations. HOA property, no trespassing. Access restricted to members only, and the pièce de résistance. Violators will be reported. Max tilted his head at the signs, clearly confused, that his potty route had become a crime scene. I was less confused and more furious. I snapped a photo of the signs, another of the trench, then grabbed a spade from the garage and filled the damn thing in myself. I wasn't about to break an ankle just because some power-hungry clipboard committee decided to wage psychological warfare. Back inside, I checked the neighborhood forum, an online cesspool called Silver Pines Voices. Sure enough, right there in the HOA's pinned bulletin was a post from Sandra. We regret to inform our community that a nearby resident has refused to comply with our neighborhood safety regulations. This individual continues to use our common areas without authorization, putting residents, especially children, at risk. We are taking all legal and procedural measures to ensure the safety and order of Silver Pines. The comments were a mix of pearl-clutching and pitchfork sharpening. One woman wrote, "I heard his dog already bit someone." Another asked if they could file a class action. A guy named Paul chimed in with, "If he wants to live like a feral woodsman, he can stay out of our spaces." Feral woodsman. Nice. Then Liana got an email, not from Sandra directly, but from the HOA's Pet Compliance Committee. I didn't even know that was a thing. The message requested that Max be registered immediately, including veterinary records, licensing tags, a photo, and, get this, a DNA swab for their database. Failure to comply would result in further fines. Are they serious? Liana asked, reading it twice. They want to catalog our dog like he's a crime suspect? At least they haven't asked for paw prints yet, I said. I crafted a response, short, professional, and just acidic enough. I reminded them, again, that our property was not part of Silver Pines, and that any further intrusion would be met with formal complaints. I sent it to Sandra and CC'd our lawyer. No reply. That evening, I installed a temporary bypass trail through a grove on our own side of the boundary, just to avoid dealing with more trench warfare. I posted new signs of my own. Private property. Access for owner only. But I had a sinking feeling this wasn't over. Later that night, I walked out onto the porch and watched Max lying on the steps, ears twitching. Somewhere beyond the trees, wind rustled the branches. Peaceful. But under the surface, I could feel the HOA sharpening their claws. And I wasn't wrong. It was a Thursday morning when the unmarked cruiser pulled up to the house. At first, I figured someone had taken a wrong turn down the dirt road. But when the two deputies stepped out, one older, stocky with mirrored sunglasses, the other young and stiff like a walking HR manual, I knew this wasn't a social visit. Max barked once and trotted to the porch, tail wagging like he'd just met new friends. I stepped outside and waved, already feeling the irritation simmering beneath my skin. "Mr. Holt?" the older deputy asked. "That's me. Something going on?" "We received a report from the Silver Pines HOA regarding an incident involving your dog. Allegedly, a child was bitten on or near your property." I blinked. "Bitten? That's not possible. Max hasn't left the yard in 2 days. He's either in the house or in the back, behind a locked gate." The younger one shifted, pulling out a notepad like this was a crime drama. "Do you mind if we take a look at the dog?" I stepped aside. "Be my guest. Just don't expect him to pose for a mugshot." Max wagged his tail, rolled over, and exposed his belly like the hardened criminal he was. The officers glanced at each other. The older one asked, "Do you have any security footage?" "Oh, I've got better than footage. I've got the timeline." I pulled out my phone, opened the security app, and showed them the past 48 hours of footage. Max hadn't so much as sniffed the fence line, let alone escaped. The footage from the supposed time of the incident showed him curled up under the deck, snoozing like a golden-furred log. The older deputy nodded. "This clears things up. Do you know who made the report?" "Let me guess. Sandra Brooks?" He didn't answer, but his mouth twitched. They thanked me and left without another word. But the knot in my gut only tightened. False police reports weren't just annoying. They were dangerous. What if I hadn't had the footage? What if Max had barked at the wrong moment and they'd come with animal control? What if I hadn't been home? By noon, the rumors were already flying. A neighbor posted on the Silver Pines forum. Child rushed to urgent care after dog attack. HOA taking legal action. The post was conveniently vague, just suggestive enough to spark panic and outrage. No names, no photos, just an emotional payload designed to paint me as a negligent, dog-owning lunatic lurking in the woods. I took screenshots of every comment. Liana, bless her, tried to keep me from spiraling. "They're desperate," she said. "This is how desperate people behave." But I knew better. This wasn't desperation. This was strategy. They wanted me isolated, hated, pressured into giving in. Whether it was joining the HOA or leaving entirely, they were closing ranks. That evening, I walked the perimeter of our property, pausing at the edge of the trail. The HOA property signs were still there, as bold and smug as ever. Max sat beside me, head tilted, waiting for me to make the next move. I stared into the trees, jaw tight, and said quietly, "You want war? You've got it." Revenge, when done right, doesn't come with shouting matches or threats yelled over fences. It comes quiet, slow, methodical, like cold steel sliding into warm butter. After the false report to the police and the smear campaign online, I knew arguing with the HOA was pointless. Sandra didn't want resolution. She wanted submission. And I don't do submission. I called my attorney, Nancy Sloan. Sharp, dry-humored, and utterly unshakable. I asked her to pull the county plat maps and verify ownership of the trail and the adjoining clearing the HOA used for their monthly community wellness circles, or whatever sanitized nonsense they were calling it. A few days later, she called me back, chuckling. "Eric," she said, "you're going to love this. That land, the trail, the clearing, the little bench with the inspirational plaque. It's not HOA land. Never has been." "You're kidding." "Belongs to a guy named Ted Collier, retired surveyor, moved to Arizona in '09, still pays taxes on the land, but hasn't set foot in the county in over a decade." I got his number. Ted was 78, hard of hearing, and thought I was a telemarketer at first. But once I explained the situation, he was delighted to get rid of the land. "That old lot's just been a money drain," he said. "Hell, if you'll cover the legal fees and toss me enough for a fishing boat, it's yours." I wired him 60 grand and got the deed transferred before the ink on the bill of sale dried. Within a week, I legally owned the trail, the clearing, and the narrow stretch of woods the HOA had been treating like their spiritual commune for years. They'd paved part of it, hosted events there, even installed benches, on someone else's land. Now it was mine. I didn't announce it. Not yet. First, I had Nancy draft formal notices to the HOA and post them on their office door, the trail entrance, and the community board by their mail kiosk. The language was simple and brutal. Effective immediately, the land formerly assumed to be part of the Silver Pines HOA common area is now private property under the sole ownership of Eric Holt. Access is restricted. Any trespassing will result in legal action. Then I got to work. I hired a local contractor to install low-profile fencing along the new perimeter. Nothing aggressive, just enough to establish a clear boundary. We added signs every 20 feet. Private property, no public access. Then came the cameras. Motion-activated, infrared, the kind I usually install to protect clients' server farms, not forest trails. One camera caught Sandra herself standing at the trailhead, reading my notice and fuming like a teapot about to blow its lid. A few days later, I installed a keypad-locked gate across the trail's entrance, just for flair. Access codes? None issued. Not yet. The Silver Pines forum exploded. What happened to our wellness area? Is this even legal? Why would someone do this? One user suggested I was trying to destroy community cohesion. Another claimed I was a secret developer planning to build condos. Sandra stayed silent. That told me she'd seen the paperwork and knew she had no case. I imagine she was too busy trying to figure out how to spin the narrative without admitting they'd been squatting on land they never owned. Liana watched me work, amused, and maybe a little impressed. "So," she asked, handing me a glass of lemonade as I finished installing the gate, "you gonna charge them rent?" "Tempting," I said. "But no, this isn't about money." Max barked twice and chased a squirrel under the porch. No, this wasn't about money. This was about boundaries. Real ones, legal ones, and the kind you don't cross unless you're ready for consequences. They didn't wait long. Less than a week after I sealed off the trail, they came knocking, literally and figuratively. I was sipping coffee on the porch when I heard the crunch of gravel. A black SUV pulled up to my gate, and out stepped Sandra Brooks, flanked by 3 of her HOA lackeys like some twisted version of a city inspection team. They wore matching polo shirts with Silver Pines HOA embroidered on the chest, armed with clipboards, tablets, and the kind of smug expressions that come with unwarranted authority. Sandra called out without even looking toward the camera above the gate. "Mr. Holt, we're here to conduct a site inspection and verify claims regarding restricted access to community resources." I took a long sip of my coffee and pressed the intercom button. "Nope." There was a pause. "Excuse me? You're not authorized to enter private property. This isn't a community resource, Sandra. You're trespassing." Her voice rose an octave. "You're obstructing access to areas historically used by Silver Pines residents. That makes this a community concern." "Historical misuse isn't ownership," I replied. "This land was never yours, and now I own it. That's how deeds work." The tallest of her cronies, clipboard in hand, stepped forward and rattled the gate. "You can't just fence off community trails." I raised an eyebrow. "And you can't rattle a locked gate on someone else's land. That's called attempted trespass." They huddled for a moment, whispering like teenagers plotting to sneak into a movie. I was about to go back inside when I saw movement in the corner of the camera feed, around the side of the fence. And then it happened. One of the HOA's private security guards, yes, they apparently had private security, came lumbering down the wooded edge of my property and climbed over the fence like a drunk raccoon. As I watched in disbelief, another man, younger and wiry, started fiddling with the keypad on the gate, pulling at wires like he was trying to hotwire a car from 1987. I didn't yell. I didn't run outside. I just tapped the Activate Alarm button on my phone. The sirens kicked in instantly, piercing, strobing, enough to make deer sprint for the next county. The fence's perimeter lights flared on, and a recorded voice echoed through the trees. "Warning. Private property. You are being recorded. Authorities have been notified." Liana, upstairs working, came rushing down. "They're breaking in." "Not anymore." I already had the local sheriff's non-emergency line on speed dial, but this time I didn't bother with the polite option. I called 911. The dispatcher was calm but direct. "You're saying 2 individuals are unlawfully attempting to enter your property?" "Yes, one just climbed over the fence, and another is tampering with the gate controls." "Stay inside." "Officers are en route." It didn't take long. 2 marked cars tore up the driveway within minutes. The security guard who'd jumped the fence was still wandering around near the clearing, trying to act casual, while his buddy had gone full panic mode and was pretending to inspect the keypad like it was all just routine maintenance. The deputies weren't buying it. They separated everyone and took statements. Sandra tried to explain that they were merely concerned citizens conducting oversight of shared resources. One deputy raised an eyebrow so hard I thought it might fly off his face. "Ma'am," he said slowly, "you were given formal notice that this land is privately owned. And you brought private security to force access?" "I wouldn't say force. But you did climb over a locked gate," he said to the guard, who looked like he suddenly remembered what jail food tastes like. "They didn't arrest anyone. Not yet. But they took full reports, documented everything, and promised it would be passed along to the DA. I handed them a flash drive with the camera footage, and they nodded like they'd seen enough already." By sunset, the HOA group was gone. Sandra didn't say goodbye. She just stared at me through the bars of the gate like I'd stolen something from her. But she was wrong. I didn't steal anything. I just took it back. The official lawsuit landed 2 weeks later, delivered by a very apologetic courier who looked like he hated being part of it. Sandra and the Silver Pines HOA were suing me for obstruction of historic community access, intentional defamation of HOA leadership, and my personal favorite, creating a hostile environment detrimental to community morale. I handed the II envelope to Nancy, who reviewed it over a glass of red wine like she was reading light fiction. "This is hilarious," she said flatly. "They're suing you for hurting their feelings and winning too hard." We filed a countersuit the next morning. Trespassing, defamation, filing a false police report, attempted destruction of private property, harassment. Oh, and a personal favorite of my own, civil conspiracy. Then came discovery. That was when things got interesting. Turns out, Sandra had been running Silver Pines like her own personal fiefdom. Misappropriated HOA funds, fabricated meeting minutes, pressure tactics against dissenting homeowners. A former HOA treasurer even submitted an affidavit claiming she'd resigned after Sandra altered financial records to cover legal fees she wasn't authorized to spend. We brought it all into the open. The court date was set. The courtroom was packed. Neighbors, local reporters, even the county zoning officer. Sandra arrived in a white pantsuit like she was heading to a reality TV reunion, flanked by 2 nervous-looking lawyers who kept flipping through folders with growing desperation. My side, just me, Nancy, and a very confident PowerPoint presentation. The judge, middle-aged, no nonsense, let Sandra's team speak first. They rambled about tradition, implied easements, community expectation of access. The judge raised a hand and interrupted, "Do you have any documentation of ownership?" They didn't. When it was our turn, Nancy moved with the precision of a surgeon. Deed history, tax records, surveillance footage, police reports, HOA emails. The kicker? A video of Sandra discussing with her board how they could pressure Holt into compliance before the audit hits. The courtroom went quiet. The judge didn't even need a recess. She ruled in our favor on the spot, denied their suit with prejudice, and granted ours full hearing. Sandra's legal team turned gray. A week later, the judgment came down. Sandra was to be removed from her position. The HOA had to issue a public apology and pay $180,000 in damages for legal costs, property violations, and defamation. Oh, and the county revoked their right to manage anything outside their existing boundary. Sandra disappeared from public view. Word was she moved in with her sister out in Tampa. The Silver Pines Forum shut down the next day. Probably a mercy. I didn't celebrate. Not yet. There was still one thing left to do. 2 months after the ruling, the trail was quiet again. Not with tension, not with surveillance sirens or posted threats. Just quiet the way it used to be. Birds, wind, and Max trotting along beside me, his tail wagging like he'd personally won the lawsuit. Maybe he had. We rebuilt the path carefully, not as a public park, not as a gift to the HOA, but as something better. An invitation-only nature trail. We posted a sign at the gate. Welcome to Holt Reserve. Access by registration only. Respect the land, or lose the privilege. A QR code linked to a simple form. Locals who'd supported us, folks who brought over coffee, wrote witness statements, or just quietly said thank you during the storm, got early access. Everyone else could apply, but we kept it curated. The irony? People started treating it better than ever. No trash, no dogs off leash, no smug HOA patrols measuring your posture. Just families walking, neighbors talking, kids playing without anyone looming with a clipboard. Even a few ex-HOA members joined the registry and sheepishly thanked me. Then came the picnic. We set it up on what used to be their community circle. Now just a sunny clearing with a new wooden pavilion we built ourselves. No HOA banners, no passive-aggressive flyers about grass height. Just long tables, folding chairs, homemade food, and a charcoal grill I dragged out from the shed. Liana handled the guest list. I manned the grill. Max handled the morale patrol, wagging and mooching his way from one group to the next. We didn't make speeches. No self-congratulatory toasts or back-patting. But there was a moment, near sundown, when I caught myself just watching. Neighbors laughing, kids chasing fireflies, Liana smiling over a glass of sangria, and that same piece of land, once filled with HOA wellness sessions and whispered politics, finally being used for something good. A few folks asked if I'd consider running for some kind of community council, maybe even help start a better alternative to the HOA. I politely declined. I'd fought my war. Someone else could run the new order. Later that night, I sat on the porch with a cold beer. Max curled at my feet. The wind rustled through the trees like it always had. Only now, it felt different. Like the land had finally exhaled. I looked out toward the gate, glowing faintly in the dark with its discreet little keypad and motion sensor. No sirens, no lawsuits, just security. Peace earned the hard way, and I smiled to myself. This, I said aloud, raising my bottle toward the woods, is how you fix a community. One line in the dirt at a time.